Welcome, everybody. I can't tell if everybody in the waiting room has joined us yet or not, but we're getting there.
I think we're good.
Okay. Well, welcome, everybody. It's nice to see so many people. It's nice to see some names that I recognize. Thank you for our think tank chat. We have with us today several staff members that are going to kind of help out with our think tank chat. So it's myself. We have Betsy Lazaga with us, Brooke Curtis, Dama Abshire, Jason Lobley, Lauren Ivanovich, and Robin Vanover. And so if you have you guys been on a chat before, one of our TA chats before? If you have, can you put a yes in the chat box for us so we just kind of get an idea? If this is your first time, if you want to put like first time, number one, just something so that we can know. Oh, we have a first timer. Thank you, Kathy. I see Julie
Welcome,
gave me
Kathy.
a thumbs up, so that makes it seem like she's been here before. Bev, oh, we got another first timer for one of our FLPBIS TA chats. Awesome. Denise, we got another first timer for one of our TA chats. Wonderful. So we have, as the Florida PBIS project, some different chats that we offer monthly. And this one's a little bit different than the typical TA chats that we do. Typically, our TA chats are around a topic and there's a presentation for you and the opportunity for you to ask questions, maybe interact some in the chat box. This one's a little bit different. We, if you want to go to the next slide, Betsy, here are our objectives for today's chat. It's really just about a structured opportunity for you to share strategies with one another about topics that are of interest to you. So we don't have a formal PowerPoint presentation, even though we do have a couple slides here. What we're going to do, just to give you a little bit of framework and structure today, we have modeled this off of the National High School APBS network. We do monthly think tanks for our high schools, and they've been very successful, and we've gotten some very positive feedback, so we wanted to try that with our Florida chats. So today, what we're going to do for structure-wise is we're going to start off and we're going to do some questioning and asking why you came today, what you want to know. Depending upon the size of the group, we may stay in a large group, or we may break into breakout rooms based on topics that are of interest to you. If we stay in the large group, we're just going to kind of do that question and brainstorming ideas throughout. If we go into the breakout rooms, we're going to do that for about 25 minutes. And then we'll ask you to come back into the main room and share one thing that you're going to take away with you from today's chat. But in saying that, we do have some norms that we want to abide by so everybody gets to participate, get their questions answered today. The first thing that we like to do is to keep the cameras on when possible, just so that we can see your face. It's not a requirement. I know some people don't like cameras. I don't either, but I do have mine on. Or sometimes I know like Lauren is having some issues with bandwidth, and so it doesn't quite work for her right now. But that allows us to see you. The second one is to before me. So if I make a comment on something or if I ask a question, then once I've shared, I'll allow two other people to share before I jump back in and share. So that way everybody gets that opportunity to share. I think we're all here today because we want to get some different ideas. So we're always going to assume that everybody here is here for positive intent. Again, maintain confidentiality. Do keep in mind that the FLPBIS project does record these. So just keep that in mind as we're doing that today. If at all possible, listen with as few distractions as you humanly can. Those of you who are in schools, we know that's not always feasible or possible. And then when you are comfortable, you can share. We'll use a chat box. If you have access to a microphone, you can unmute yourself. So lots of different ways. So with that, I think, Betsy, if you want to end the PowerPoint so that way we can have bigger faces on the screen, that might make it a little bit better. So we can kind of see everybody, which is really kind of nice. So welcome. And so I'm going to kind of open it up to the participants today. So I want to know, what did you come here? Like, what questions do you have that you want answered? Again, feel free to unmute yourself, type your question in the chat box. What did you want to get out of coming to today?
Good afternoon. My name is Lucretia Cooper. I'm at Pembroke Lakes Elementary School in Pembroke Pines, Florida. And I just wanted to get more ideas as far as incentivizing and encouraging that positive behavior in intervening in those situations where we have students that are at tier 2 or tier 3 when it comes to RTI for behavior.
So this is where it gets maybe a little bit uncomfortable silence, but I'm going to ask if anybody has some ideas about ways they've incentivized behavior for students at tier 2 or receiving tier 2 supports and students receiving tier 3 supports that have worked.
We have someone in the chat, Genevieve. Thank you, Genevieve, for sharing. She said she did a behavior bingo challenge. So if you wouldn't mind maybe sharing some of the details of that, that sounds pretty interesting.
Sure, you might hear the loudspeaker from now here and there because we are going to do dismissal soon. So that's just a heads up.
Problem.
But one of the things that that I use as the school counselor and the PBIS point of contact here at the school. I'm at Rock Island Elementary School in Sunrise, Florida, and one of the things that I use with my tier 2 and tier 3 students, in addition to small group counseling, is I use the behavior bingo challenge. So what we do is I use it for my study skills group and I use it for my behavior groups. Something that I've noticed is that we tend to have these social skill groups. We tend to have these small groups for behavior. However, even though they are taught in small group, we don't see a transfer from group to the classroom. So we came up with I came up with the idea to do a behavior bingo challenge. So whatever the students we are working on for that week, we create an individual bingo board that you can print off in sheets, and the students take it back to their classroom. And the teachers have to sign in the corner of each box whenever they've seen the children exhibit the appropriate behavior. So if we have a child who's working on coping skills, did you see them go over to their cool down corner? Did you see them put their head down? Did you see them take a rest? Did you see them ask to listen to music or come talk to me? If they see any of those things that are happening in those boxes, the teacher signed their initials in the box. And then they have 1 week to complete the behavior challenge. If they don't, they get a new card the next week during group. If they do, they get rewarded for that. So it offers that incentive piece for them, but it's also forcing them to use some of the skills that we're trying and reiterate some of the skills we're trying to teach them in group. So that's what we've been doing.
Love that idea. And I also love that it helps the teacher to narrow in on what you guys are working on in groups to kind of as a reminder of what skills to look for.
Sure. Absolutely.
And sorry, Miss Genevieve,
yes.
Can you send that to a template of that or example of that to my email address? I'm in Broward as well.
Sure. If you send your email in the chat, I can go ahead and do that. There is an app online, if anybody else is interested too, that you can use to create your own bingo card. And it's called bingobaker.com. If you use that, you can type in whatever skills or whatever actions you want them to practice, and you can generate your own bingo cards. So I'll put that in the chat as well.
Very cool. Anybody else have any other ideas about providing incentives for students receiving supports at tier 2 or tier 3? I love all the ideas going in and sharing in the chat box.
Stephanie, this is
Yes.
Brooke. I was just going to elaborate a different variation of bingo that I've seen with behavior is if multiple students are working on a behavior bingo card, and then, if they're making a straight line, fill the card, 4 corners, whatever the bingo category is. And then if that student, that when they meet that behavioral expectation, whether it be on a check-in, check-out system or other behavior, maybe like Genevieve mentioned, the social skills, that they're able to fill out that bingo square. And then when we have a bingo as a group, if that student is part of that bingo, they're part of that line, they would be part of the additional incentive as well. So there's lots of variations that you can do with behavior bingo, and to find the one that's the right fit for the skills that you're working on, as well as the groups of students as well.
That's awesome. Thank you, Brooke.
Okay, so we've gotten one question and some kind of 2 variation ideas. Can someone else tell me what were they hoping to get out of today? What ideas were they looking for? Feel free to unmute yourself or type a question in the chat box. What ideas were you looking for when you signed up to come today?
Hello, this is Renee Downey. I'm in St. Johns County and I work at a middle school. And our PBIS is working really great for the kids who are doing what they should. And it's doing a good job with our students who are on the fringe from maybe, some of the incentives are holding them back. But I'm trying to think of what people are doing in a more immediate for kind of our high flyers that can't make it 9 weeks or a quarter to get the rewards that our whole school like. I know this is for our tier 2 and tier 3 students, but some of our students are just, if they make it a week, they're doing really great. So what are some of the weekly or bi-weekly things that you're doing for your, I want to call them kind of high flyers that are having difficulty following the rules?
Thank you, Renee. I have ideas, but I want to see if anybody else has some first. So I'm going to see if I can open it up. Anybody have any ideas for Renee? So a couple things, 2 things I would say, Renee, is I would also first look at for those students, would they benefit from tier 2 supports as kind of a first go of that, and see if that would be something that would be needed for some of the students. But one of the things that I did when I was still in the classroom is I would set some different goals for the students and then have them identify something that they wanted to work towards. And so they still had access to, we didn't have a school-wide system, they still had access to the classroom-wide system, but then they had smaller goals that were more measurable and observable for them to work towards the bigger goal. And I have seen some schools that have done that. And they also make sure that there's multiple level of ways to spend those tokens. So if I don't know if you're doing a token system, but if you are, the student who has 1 can spend it on something, or 2, but for something higher level, they have to have a little bit more. So there's that variation in there and the students all have access to it. I did see one school do a really nice job once of looking at the students because they had like a set price of things. And they went to the students who they surveyed the teacher and said, do you have any students that have never had access to the tier 1 system? It was a school store and everything was worth $5. And they said, yeah, we have certain kids that have never had access to it. So they got the list of kids and then they contacted those students and found out how many tokens did they have. And so Lauren might say, I've got 3, Mandy might say, I've got 2, Damon might say, I've got 1. To try to encourage the students to get them excited about the reward system, they would say you need 1 more within a certain time frame, and then they didn't have to have that 5. They had to have that 1 more token to get access to it. And then they built the students up to earn those 5 in the future. They also combined it with some instruction and tier 2 supports as well, because they realized that the students also needed some of those tier 2 supports as well.
Thank you.
Anybody else have ideas?
I really like what you said, Stephanie, because I feel like sometimes we really need to adjust those goals. They can't necessarily be the same for each student. It's kind of like you wouldn't have like your entire school having to read War and Peace to achieve something. You know, we have to kind of start where the student is. So if that goal is just it's too ambitious for that student right now, then we want to start meet them where they are.
Thank you. Okay, I was going to say, let's ask one more person to share why they came today. And I think we have enough to do some breakout rooms in a second. So is there someone else that has a question of why they came today? They want an idea for something specific.
I have another one. This is Renee again. So we're kind of in the beginning stages. So we've just put some rudimentary things in place, got a committee going. We don't have an overall school system that we're using yet as far as like tokens or anything like that. So I think, you know, the systems is my immediate area that I'm researching for next year. And anytime I want to implement something next year, I want to try it with my staff this year so that when we roll it out next year, they're familiar with it and everything like that. So I really wanted to know, like, okay, are you using software? Are you using tickets? Like if you're doing a token, those type of things and trainings and just kind of like how to get from where we are to somewhere more systematic. Big question, I know.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Denise Duffus from New River Middle School in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great. How are you?
Doing well, amazing. So when we started PBIS in that initial state, school-wide, we created a cohort. So we have a team of teachers and we have not only educators, but we have security monitors, we have counselors, a good mixture so that way we can see students through different lenses and create our school-wide expectations accordingly. And then after that, we are the sharks. So we created, it's like ICUs that are like little tickets or sharp bucks. And so what we did with that, we had a training with everyone. We look at, to start it, we use our behavioral data to, you know, create momentum as to why everyone should be on the same page as we try to modify behaviors, because it's not, to me, it's not, you're really not changing, you're modifying, you know, just helping our kids to think differently. You will have a few little pushback, but consistency is the key. We have a PBIS store. So the kids are able to redeem their dollar or sharp bucks at the store, which is on Wednesdays. And so we have community members to support goods for the store. We have food, different items, book, pencil, whatever it is that they, you know, would donate to the store, it's there. And so there's an item list. So as the students come to the store, they can say, okay, I need 4 ICU to purchase this, 10, so on and so forth. In addition to that, we do shout outs. So each week, you know, month, we identify a student of the month who demonstrated the 3 expectations: being safe, being responsible, and being respectful. And so the teachers will identify the students. So we have a big celebration, you know, each month, you know, we call it Shark of the Month. And we really honor those students. So kids really look forward to being Shark of the Month. And we also, not only at the school level, but at the classroom levels, we have incentives and rewards. So if students accumulate X amount of ICUs, that means I seen you doing whatever positive thing is, They can redeem it for at the last minute of class. If they have 5, they can eat a small little snack. Or, if they have maybe 10, they can redo a late assignment that was all close up. But we created those incentives as a team. Then we send it out to the teachers, have them vote on those incentives. Once we have the votes of everyone, get their input, if we need to tweak anything, we'll tweak it. And then we present it to everyone. Okay, here's the final product. And this is how we're going to move forward. You will have a few little pushback, but don't focus on those few little pushbacks. Just continue with the momentum throughout in the classroom. Encourage the teachers to remember our expectation wherever you are on campus is to be safe, is to be respectful to each other, to adults. So they're hearing those expectations everywhere they go. So that it was a mouthful, but pretty much that's what we're doing, and it's posted everywhere. So everywhere they go, in the hallways, they have the poster how they're supposed to walk and treat each other in those common areas, in the cafeteria, in the media center. So it's posted. The classroom behavior, we use CHAMPS, but it's also aligned with our expectation, whatever personal behavioral plan the teacher will develop. It is still in alignment with being respectful, being responsible, and being safe.
Thank you, Denise. I think that was very helpful for Renee for getting started. Renee, do you have any questions for Denise?
No, that was awesome. I took lots of notes on that. We are doing like the monthly shout outs, and it's the PBIS store that I'm having the biggest hesitancy of, because I don't want to start it and not be prepared.
Mhm.
So I think like the idea of like, we have 900 kids. So I'm trying to think like, how much do I have to get? How much should I make everything cost? How much should I give out to each teacher? Like, it's the logistics that are kind of, I think I just am so afraid of starting something that I can't follow through with. So I'm trying to figure out how to do it in a way that's meaningful to kids, and that I can make sure that I do with fidelity.
Right, and we have a hand raised. So Ms. Cooper?
Right. And I was going to say, just like Renee, we had the same issue pertaining to keeping a store going. So the way we did, because just like Denise, we have the posters throughout our building. I actually have a wall in my office as the assistant principal that when the kids come in, they're seeing it as well. So if I'm having to, and I'll turn it around so you can see, if I'm having to remind them about those expectations and rules, I also have it here, as well as when we have meetings pertaining to our positive behavior committee and discipline committee, we're having those conversations pertaining to the behavior and what we're seeing and best practices. But we ran into the same issue as far as keeping a store together. So what we did is each quarter, it is a surprise to the kids, but not a surprise to the adults. So the kids are earning we realized that it was working so good that our students were copying the Pelican bugs that we had, because they were in black and white originally. So they were making copies, and I even had my lovies in aftercare selling snacks for Pelican bugs. So we knew at that moment that it was working, and they were excited about earning them, but they were earning the wrong way. So we went to the colored ones that are on a special paper, so that we would know if they were copying them or not. But each month is a surprise. So we may have an ice cream truck, which is basically us going out to get the ice cream, putting it on a cart, going around to the classes. Because the other thing that we noticed is that the kids that weren't making it also weren't seeing the incentives. So it didn't affect them in any way. So we would go to the classes instead of them coming out to us, so that they could see like, oh, wow, look at the celebration that's happening as a result of the behavior that I'm showing, because I met the expectations. And then what myself and my principal do is each quarter, in addition to that, we have, just like their discipline referrals, we have positive referrals where the teacher can send us a message saying, this particular child or these 2 students from my class have gone over and beyond what is expected of them or have made tremendous improvements, so that we can call to their parents and say, instead of me calling pertaining to having to discipline them or there's an issue that they're having, we're calling because you send every single day such an amazing young man or young lady, and we just wanted to thank you, and they get to go to treasure box. So we try to do it that way, in addition to our kids of character that happens every month. Like Denise said, those students that are showing respect, showing cooperation, showing kindness, they're represented through our morning announcements. They get to come across the screen with their certificate, and then you can hear the applause that's happening in the building, because we knew we could keep up with those things. And especially in a crunch, if it goes from being 300 kids this semester or quarter to being 500 or 700 the next, it's hard to say, do we have enough stuff and enough specific items that students want to buy? So we instead made it a surprise to the students, so that in the background, we could definitely come up with something in a crunch if it's so many students that are getting that incentive.
So that's awesome. Some follow-up questions, if you don't mind. So how many bucks do you give out to teachers, and how many bucks does the surprise cost?
So it increases by quarter. We start initially out with the first quarter to be about 40. They get them in increments of 1. This is 5 because our support staff and leadership team get increments of 5 because we're out less. So when we're seeing students consistently that are meeting those expectations, we definitely want to give them that little bonus as far as you got caught doing something good or meeting those expectations by someone in leadership. And then the teachers have wands, and they get 300 at the beginning of the year. And every time they need, I have a box full of copies of these that I just put in their box as they need more. But at the end of the quarter, they collect back and they keep an Excel sheet or a roster of what the students earn for that quarter and how much they're going to spend towards the incentive. So if it's 35 bucks, then the students will spend, and say they made 50 bucks this quarter, they're going to give the teacher their 35, and the teachers will minus that as far as deduct that from the total amount that they have. So that way we can keep reusing the money, and it's again, a certain material that we don't have to worry about as far as paper wise and getting balled up and things like that. So that's what we do as far as that piece.
And what grade level are you, and how big is your school?
We are K-5 and we have 700. It teeters between 700, 715.
Thank you.
That's my, oh, I'm so sorry.
I was just going to say, someone had put some comments in the chat box, and so I just wanted to share that there is a live binder, and that does have a list of free rewards, and there's ideas for both elementary and for secondary. And I put in there, one of the best ways to find out what those free or cheap rewards are is ask the students, survey them, and say in there, it has to be something that's free. And kids, depending upon the age, will say things like wear, a baseball cap to school, bring a stuffy to put on my desk, take my shoes off. One middle school, they actually did their survey a little bit different. So what they did is they gave the students a couple weeks, and they had a suggestion box in the media center, and the kids could write down what they would like for rewards and put in that suggestion box. After those couple of weeks, this team sat down and went through all of the suggestions and then made their survey based on what the kids had put in that suggestion box. So anything that was really overpriced, they pulled out. Anything that was repeated a lot, they made sure to include as one of those options. And so it was really a neat way to do that survey because it was really developed by the interests of the students. So I was going to go back to you, Denise. You were going to say something?
Yes, with the store, and I love the idea about having those special cards, because we have to make those ICUs like every quarter. So we talk about resources, it's a lot of copying. So now I know I can do them differently. But we serve over 1,600 students. So we have a very big middle school. So our store, how we operate the store is in the morning, during morning breakfast, we have our parents volunteers to come in to man the store. But before that, we surveyed our parents, volunteers to see who would be available, create a schedule, because I think I heard someone was worrying about the being the momentum with the store, the logistics, make sure everything will be in operation. And so we did that. And so we have a volunteer, each time we have the store up and running. So teachers don't have to worry about giving up their mornings or planning time. The other thing we did in the cafeteria, because you can imagine with 1,600 kids, you have a lot of kids in the cafeteria at one time. But, just as simple as in the cafeteria, one of the rules is, keeping the cafeteria clean and just the noise level in the cafeteria. And we purchased a bag of, what do you call them? It's some little lollipops, but it costs less than $20. I think they were like $13, but they had over 500 lollipops. And we gave each student a lollipop. You'll be surprised. Those middle schoolers go crazy just for one little lollipop. And it's just looking at how they're able to enter and exit the lunch line, just being able to adhere to the expectations in the classroom. So as she said, with the ice cream truck, and I know someone was concerned about, cost. So there are inexpensive ways that we can honor and recognize our student, that if our budget does not allow for, larger rewards and incentive, but if you just give them, that little lollipop, you'll be amazed. They will appreciate that. And it's under $20.
Thank you. Those are all very helpful. We do a quarter, quarter field day with our kids with a different surprise for that, but we're trying to implement something like midway through and just kind of keep building how frequently we do it. So those are all super helpful. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. So we have a very small group today. So I think what we're going to do is just continue and our group and our large group. And so I wanted to see, I know we've got a couple of people who have been chatting in the chat box as well, but haven't had a chance to maybe ask a question. So I wanted to see if either Debbie or Kristen or Bev or Kathy or Raul or Julie or had any questions that they want to ask the group about why they came here today. Hi, Raul. Do you have a question?
Good afternoon. Yes, I'm trying to see how we can potentially support. Well, I'm at the district level here in Hillsborough County, and I would love to find more ways to support schools in the secondary with disciplining, like for tardies and skipping. It seems that if you look at the data, all they're doing is administrators are suspending kids or giving them ISS or calling it something else. And when I speak to folks that are at the high school level, at the sites, it's almost like they're at a loss. I look at the district policy and it doesn't necessarily help. And I'm just curious as to what other districts and or high schools are doing that address this in secondary, the skipping and tardy issues.
Anybody have some ideas for Raul of what they've seen high schools do that have been effective for tardies for students?
This is Beverly Wilkes. I'm actually at the Department of Education, but I can share with you what we did when I was at the district level. The high school per se, they have like mentors for those students who were consistently late for school, so that those mentors at the school will actually check in with those students, and those students felt connected. But again, you have to have like volunteers to do that. So teachers were actually willing to volunteer their times to check in and mentor those students who were consistently late for school, for classes.
Thank you.
Raul, this is Jean-Via from Broward County Schools again. I can tell you what I do for attendance as well, and see if you can adjust it for the secondary level. I think you can. We did two things on my counseling plan that seems to be working. One of them is offering obviously some sort of incentive for those who are coming in late. So what we've done is we've done what's called the 10-day challenge. So we pick the days that we want. It could be, we actually just finished one. Where the students, especially those who keep coming in late or those who are missing school, it's only for those specific students. We brought them together and did like an assembly style and explained the 10-day challenge. And what we said is that these specific students have to come to school on time for 10 days. It has to be 10 weekdays. And then what they do is if we notice that they've come to school on time, then we put their name in a jar or we put their name in a pool, and we do a drawing for gas cards. So we do the gas cards for the parents because we're elementary. But I think for secondary, especially if it's a high school level, a lot of your students may drive. So I know that they need gas, especially if they have to get to school. So that could be a very quick and easy incentive. And you can do $10 gas cards. You can do $20 gas cards at the most. And you can do a drawing after the 10 days and see who wins the gas card. And the cool part about that challenge is that you get to, I'm big on challenges, as you guys can see. So for me, the big thing about that challenge is that you can keep it going. So you can do it for 10 days at a time. We've done 21 days before. Start small, maybe do a 5-day challenge, then increase it to a 7-day and then a 10-day. Before you know it, the school year is up and you've done all these different challenges to try to get these kids into school on time. So that's one incentive that you can try, especially for your secondary kids. The gas cards, again, if they're middle school, the gas cards could be for their parents. So that way you can get parent buy-in and parent engagement that way. The other thing that we've done for attendance is we've done wake-up calls. So what we've done is at a specific time of the day, we use what we call a parent link. And the specific students that are late all of the time or specific students that don't come on time, we only put their names in the inbox. So those are the calls that are going to go out to them. And so at a specific time in the morning for a couple of weeks, what they do is their parents or the kids themselves, since they have cell phones themselves, they get wake-up calls. So let's say if you have to be in school by 8:30, you get a wake-up call from the school at 7:30. Your phone is ringing off the hook. If you answer, you're going to hear us say, hey guys, it's so-and-so elementary or so-and-so middle. It's time for you to get up. You guys got to be in school. The best part about doing that was that eventually they get annoyed at the wake-up calls. So we say to them, okay, if you don't want us to send wake-up calls to you anymore, then get your butt in here on time. So those are some 2 incentives that you can start with if you like.
Thank you, appreciate that.
And Raul, Betsy had put a note in the chat box about getting students involved with that. And so we actually did something where just last week with some high schools, and it wasn't about tardies, but you could modify it to tardies, and it was about attendance. And so we went through the research and we identified reasons why kids don't come to school, what the research says. And we had a list, we narrowed it down to 10 items, and then we gave 2 others. So the kids could come up with 2 others, and then they rank ordered why students don't come to school. And from there, so they rank ordered it. And I think the things the students said most frequently was mental health and health issues. Academics, they're struggling with academics. Some said it was because their friends aren't coming, so they don't come. But those were like the 3 top ones that they picked, and they rank ordered them, and they had to pick the top 2. And then once they picked the top 2, then they had to identify the best strategies to address it. So if it was academic issues, that was the lens, and they had 10 items to rank order, which they thought was the best strategies. What was interesting for them, they said a personal phone call. So it makes me think of the wake-up call, but a personal phone call when a student is absent from school instead of those robocalls. They said, call us personally, which I thought was interesting. The second one that I thought was very interesting was they said, teach us the skills that we need to be successful. So how to set up studying at home and doing homework, how to take notes in class, like those skills to teach us to be a successful student in school. That's what they wanted. So it's a great activity. It could be modified and changing it from, you know, attendance to tardies. You just have to come up with a list of what the tardies are, have the students rank them, and then have them come up with what they think the best interventions are. The other thing with that is these are very diverse students. So they're not all leadership kids. We have some kids that get in trouble sometimes with us that are involved in it. We do have some leadership kids. We had ROTC kids. We've had students with disabilities. So it's getting that representative group involved in it. And I heard a really good idea. I'm stealing this from the high school network a couple weeks ago. Someone asked, how do you identify that representative group? And they said, well, what we did at our specific schools, we went into the cafeteria at all the lunch shifts and found out the different cliques. And then we made sure we invited a student from those different cliques sitting in together at lunch to make sure we had a good representation of the school campus. So I thought that was a good idea.
Thanks. These are all great because usually I get fixated on the things that are like the after effect, like not preventative, like the discipline stuff that I know the district needs to work on bothers me the most. But if I focus more on the preventative things you can do, it might help reduce that anyway. So I appreciate that reminder.
Yes, and also to add to that role, with the mentorship, they were able to take back, you know, if the students agreed to the counselors, to the school social workers, those barriers, because they might have been in need of, you know, support. We realized that students were homeless and were afraid to share information. So when you have that one-on-one connection, it helps when for students to share with that individual at the school.
Thank you.
Okay. We have a couple more minutes. Does anybody else have another question that hasn't had the opportunity to ask something?
Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry I wasn't able to unmute for a minute there. I just want to say I appreciate all your ideas coming from Minnesota PBIS. So wish I was in Florida. We have a lot of snow and cold here right now.
Is there any ideas that you want to take back to Minnesota?
All of these, I'm taking all of these back here to Minnesota. So I appreciate all of the sharing. They're really great ideas, especially the wake up call. I like that one. I'm supporting the schools K-12. And what I've been hearing recently, and I think it's as people are trying to really get that student voice as a part of their school, really wondering kind of where they start, especially at the secondary level, with starting some student advisory groups that don't dip into other student advisory groups. So thinking about getting that student voice through a PBIS lens, but not dipping into, like, say, student council or maybe some of those other areas, even though they all work together. If there are any ideas for some either plug and play activities or surveys or ideas that people have around a good first step to get a student group going, looking for some ideas that people might have around that.
I'll share the way that we started with our high school students this year. There's two things that we did. We started with an activity of what do you want your school to sound like, look like, and feel like. And the students brainstormed their ideas of what they want their school to sound like, look like, and feel like. And then they each voted on their top two ideas. And then from there, they came up with action steps. So, for example, one of the schools said that they wanted to hear music just during transition between classes. And the songs could change as it gets closer, you know, to the tardy bell. And so that very simplistic, easy thing, but they felt that that would give a better climate on campus. And so they told us last week they're going to start to do that. They're going to start playing music on campus at different times. It's sometimes just those little things. So that's the first activity that we do with them. The second other kind of big activity is we actually have them look at their own climate survey data. So they go back and they look at their climate survey data, and we ask them to identify what surprised them, what didn't surprise them, and what changes they would make on campus based. And we have to remind them this is the whole school, not just about them personally, because sometimes they want to like hone in on their personal stuff, but we remind them of that. We haven't had the opportunity yet, but we have heard of some high schools who then have taken that, and the students actually present the data back to the rest of the faculty and staff. And one school said, that what was it that the student said? She said, we're going to present to you our school climate data from what the students said, and you might not like to hear what you're going to hear, but this is what the students are telling you. And she had that permission from administration to present it that way. Like, you may not agree with it, you may not want to hear this, but this is what we as students had to say about our specific school. So those were two things that we did to get started with student voice.
I love that
Awesome.
so much because it feels like, you know, the kids always tell their truth. It may not be what you want to hear, but the more it isn't what you want to hear, the more important it is that you listen to it.
It's one thing to see that data on a piece of paper, but it's another thing to actually hear it from the voices of students. It really does make it resonant. Debbie, did you have another question regarding getting this set up?
No, I mean, I have a lot of
Okay.
questions. Yeah, but no, that was great. Thank you. That's a great place to start. I appreciate that suggestion. Thank you so much.
I see some other stuff has come in the chat box. If you haven't seen it, We Music for Everything and Music Works Well. Robin went back to Raul's about just reminding students about teaching what tardy means and doesn't mean. And just making sure that you're, teaching what it looks like, and then being consistent. That's the hard one. I think being consistent from staff member to staff member of what does actually tardy look like. And then just another good way of in between changing that music when you have like 60 seconds left. And I've seen some schools do that. They do like a 60-second really fast paced song that's like, this is your warning. You've got 60 seconds to get to class. Well, we have a couple more minutes. I wanted to see if anybody else had any questions that hasn't had an opportunity to ask something today for an idea. I know, Mandy, you're here. You got any questions? Mandy represents Volusia County.
Hey, Stephanie. You know that I was sorry, I had to log off for a few minutes, so this may have already come up, but I think the thing that I'm wondering right now, and this is after spending my day at one of our high schools, is just doing PBIS at the high schools. It's new to Volusia. One of the administrators was telling me he's struggling to get consensus and get people on board. So that's kind of where my brain is right now. I will say that the high school think tank has been very helpful for me to generate ideas, but that's kind of where I'm at. It seems to be fairly easy at elementary, somewhat so at middle, but high schools is at the top of my priority list right now.
Anyone have any suggestions for Mandy for the high schools for getting started? And specifically maybe consensus, and is it consensus among the staff, or is it consensus among the students, or both?
It's a little bit of both. One of the things he did mention to me was just the consistency is among staff is difficult because they can't get the consistency among the kids when the staff doesn't follow through. And that's what I told him when I was talking to him this morning. I said, it sounds like you need to focus on your staff first and, work on them, getting them buying in and building that consensus and consistency. And then that will then transition to the students.
Just one suggestion, he can use the data to drive over that message. If you have so many students being disciplined or being in in-school suspension or out-of-school suspension, then can use that to drive home the message. How can we help these students, to be successful in school? What we did at one of our elementary school, we had teachers, school social workers, school-based personnel was part of the PBIS team. And also we involve the student as well as we prep for those meetings. And then we, the lead person for that group would post the information in the newsletters, and whenever they have meetings with teachers, they will share out. So it's little buy-in, each time until, it became part of the culture of the school.
That's helpful. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Another suggestion, which I think could work at the high school level, just as we create a cohorts with the adults, you can have a group of students who can make videos, because we have kids who would make videos as to, what does it look like, sounds like they said, and feels like. So we're talking about entering the cafeteria. We had kids who created a video as to how you should enter the cafeteria. So I think there's a lot of power in the student voice. So if we get them involved at the high school level, you could use, as they suggested, random students, or if you have a drama club, you can solicit their skill set, and create those videos. And so when they're actively involved and see why and so on and so forth, probably that would give them a little boost as to the importance of, being a PBIS school.
I wanted to say that one of the things that I always do, whether secondary or primary, is that, and someone said earlier that the whole data piece. So PBIS is not incentives only, it's the interventions and the supports. And most schools can tell you, oh, well, this kid broke a rule, but they yet might not have even rules up on their room or even school-wide behavior expectations. So when a school is quick to just talk about the disciplinary actions for the infractions of the behavior, right? I say, well, if you had the PBIS, this is again for the buy-in piece, right? I'm like, if you have a solid PBIS, then you're looking at data and looking at the behaviors that are not doing, where the kid's not doing well, to then provide interventions, specific interventions. And in turn, if done properly, then your behavior will drop, and or that you'll be able to cater to their needs better, because you'll know, okay, with our tier one, we're able to get ideally, the whole 80%. But I think sometimes not just teachers, but even administrators, schools, they forget that, and they think it's just an incentive and a party, and or we're going to the store. And to me, the bigger picture is the data that you are able to collect when you have interventions in place to then work on supporting those kids and schools where needed. But if you don't make that connection, then whether it's high school or elementary or middle, then it's just another thing like, oh, I gotta have a store now and hang out these bucks. God, I'm doing too much already. But then they'll quickly call you or a behavior support person, hey, I need help with this kiddo that's behaving this way or that, So it's making that connection because they don't quite see it. Unfortunately, at least in my experience, PBIS sometimes has a connotation that's just negative because it's all more work to do for a party and not the interventions and supports that it should be.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Robin put a great suggestion in the chat box. We have a staff belief survey for PBIS that we typically give to schools when they are going to do the tier one training, but it doesn't just have to be then. So those results can give you really break down what parts do your staff already buy into, what parts do your staff struggle with, and then you could kind of gear what you're doing around that. So say, for example, they really are struggling with the need to teach behavior. So then figuring out, okay, what's a way on our campus, like you said, developing videos. Maybe it's not the teachers doing it. Maybe it's the students that are then doing that and getting the students to develop the ways to teach what those expectations and rules should look like. So that's one. And then the other suggestion I was going to say is that probably not the best way to word this, but one of the schools that I worked with that was the most successful at high school was they didn't call it PBIS because in their district, PBIS was elementary school and we don't do that at secondary. So instead, they developed it or addressed it as this is just how we handle behavior and discipline on campus. These are the things that we're going to put in place. And most high schools are very much into their mascot and that culture around that mascot. We're the, we're the Wolves, we're the Dolphins, we're the this, we're the that. So this school just said, this is how we're handling behavior and discipline. And they built everything around their mascot, their expectations, their rules, their data, everything was around that. And their school psychologist monthly, at the beginning of every month, she sent out the data from the month before. And she did comparison from month to month and year to date. And she said, we have a large high school. That was the best way to get it to them. She goes, I don't really know if people actually look at it. And she said there were a couple months where she's a school psychologist. There's some crisis. She doesn't get it out on the first of the month for the day before. She said, I would get emails. Where's the data for this month? You haven't sent the data yet. Where is it? So that was a big aha moment for her that yes, they are looking at those emails. They are looking at the data. And so that was just a school that was really successful with getting started at high schools.
Hi, it's Genevieve again. I was actually listening to some of the concerns at the high school level, and there were a couple of ideas that popped into my head to try to help get them excited about it and get them started. I love the idea that you had one high school that was focused on their mascot, and I was going to kind of lead with that. If you think back to what high school was like for you, start with that. What are some of the things that you remembered in high school that was your favorite thing that you participated in? You went to the games, you had pep rallies, you had competitions, you focused on your mascot. My suggestion would be to tie your PBIS plan to those things. Especially high school students, they love shout outs. They love being acknowledged because, obviously in elementary, we acknowledge our kids all the time. But, I noticed that in middle and high school that we kind of step away from that. And so I would use your PBIS system as part of every day. So why not create a pep rally? Get a team of students together to put together like maybe some sort of PBIS pep rally, see what that would look like and get other people's buy-in into it. Another thing I would think of when you think of high school, you think of the popular kids, right? You know who your popular kids are. You know who a lot of the kids gravitate to. So what I would do if it were me is I would reach out to those students and bring them together and say, hey, we want to try something different at our school, but I need your help. What are some ways that you think you can get the kids to buy into this? How can you help us with that? What kind of PBIS plan can we come with that? I know high school kids love passes. They love They love no homework passes. I get to leave early passes, especially food. Anything dealing with food, high school kids love. So if you tie in some of your incentives for PBIS with that, I did see one high school that had their PBIS reward passes in lanyards, in plastic lanyards. The kids get to wear it around their neck. They get to walk around with it at school. So like for example, if you notice that some of your kids get one late pass, you put it on a lanyard. When they walk into class, they show it to you. So I know they love stuff like that. So for me, I would start with and talk to your teachers about, let's step back for a second and say, what was something about high school that we loved, and see how we can tie PBIS into that. And again, reach out to your popular kids, the ones that the kids gravitate to, see if you can help with that. High school kids love passes. They love competition, and they love competitions all the time. And they love pep rallies. They love football games. If you acknowledge some of your students who are doing well with their behavior at a football game before it starts, and so that the crowd can see. So I think maybe with high school, start with that and see if you can generate excitement with that. Start with what you already have.
Thank you so much. I just love the sharing that we've had today. I know, we had thought about breakout rooms, but I think we had such a small group staying in this large one and getting those ideas to share were amazing. So just, we do have a survey. This is our general survey that we always ask at the end of all the TA chats, but I just want to know from those that are here, and you could just type it in the chat box, or you can let us know later, but we just want to know if today was beneficial. If we did another kind of think tank open session like today, would you join again? And would you share it with a colleague to attend if we do a session like this again? So just some feedback from those who attended, if it would be worthwhile to do one of these again in the future. So if you'll just kind of answer those questions in the chat box. If you'll do this TA survey, that's come up, we'd appreciate it. And we just appreciate everyone's participation today, whether you had a question, you had ideas, or you simply were here to learn and steal from others. We really appreciate your time today.
And we are going to post a recording of this chat. And what I'll do is in the live binder where our recordings are on our website, I will try to link some of the resources that we talked about so that you can have access to those after. And I think we've got everybody's results. So thank you guys for filling out that survey. I'm going to end the poll.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you. Thank you for everybody for attending today. We hope you at least have one idea that you can run with when you're back at your district or at your school from today.
Most definitely.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
Thank
you.
you. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Mandy, for letting me call on you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for your
Bye,
help, Rose.
everyone.
Well, thank you, Betsy. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Lauren. I know we didn't end up doing the breakout rooms, but I appreciate all of
No, I
you
think
here.
yeah, I think it worked out.
Glad it worked
pretty
out.
well.
People
Yeah.
shared great stuff.
I
Yeah.
agree. Yeah, that was, I think the people that, were asking the questions really got some good, well thought out answers and like real life experience from some of the people who are
Yeah.
living it. So that was.
And I think those who shared even got some really good ideas from each other who shared, which was really cool.
Yeah. And
Well,
it is nice for them to hear from each other.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll talk to you all
Thank
soon.
you. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.